Hey friends, I'm back. I had taken a couple weeks off from posting videos to polish up and publish my very first one-shot. Now that's out of the way and it's on the market, and I wanted to make this much requested, kind of strange video. You see, I keep getting these comments about my voice and how it sounds, how it relaxes folks, which kind of came as a surprise to me, but it inspired me to make the following video. You see, one of my favorite things to do in tabletop RPGs is to design minis and paint them. So today, we're just going to have a real cool hangout session. We're going to listen to some good tunes, and I'm going to paint a very special mini. Let's take a short rest.
What you reading there, Jester?
Nothing, Oscar.
I've gone ahead and laid out everything I use to paint minis on the kitchen table. I'm not really allowed to paint minis on the kitchen table, but my beautiful wife is asleep. She can find out when she sees this on YouTube. That'll be a whole conversation, I bet. Probably the first step to painting minis is getting some decent paint. I have presumably decent paint. As you can tell, my collection is eclectic and random and accrued from many sources. The main thing you want to focus on is getting all of your primary colors and maybe a few extras like some browns, a good skin tone, a good purple, and a good yellow. You'll notice there's a thumbtack right there. You're going to want to have a thumbtack on hand because you can get nasty paint clogs right in the nozzle, and you're going to need something on hand to clear that out. And you don't really want to get up from the table to find something, and you'll probably find the wrong thing. I've tried to use bobby pins and pencils and all manner of objects, the end of my brush, and none of those really will do. You're going to want a dedicated nozzle cleaning device. You're also going to need something to put your paint on, a palette, if you will. I think that's the term. That or an old dinner plate, or I don't know, your dog's back. I don't know your life. These are the two primary kinds of palettes you'll see on the market. There's a fancy one that you can stick your thumb through. I've never actually done that, but it would make me feel very painterly. And up here at the top, that ugly guy, let me see if I can focus up just a little bit. There we go. That's called a wet palette. It's basically a paper towel on a sponge. I have a fancy one from Amazon. I think it was $7. You can make your own for about $6.50. So, you know, if you have 50 cents worth of time and equipment, I think people use like Tupperware, a kitchen sponge, and a paper towel, and you have yourself a wet palette. Wet palettes are great because, believe it or not, even in just a few minutes, your paint can clog up and dry up, and you'll get globs of paint on your minis. And because minis are so small, you really want to keep your paint fluid and moist. Moist is a gross word. Moist is a really gross word. But a wet palette prevents all of that. You'll of course need some paint brushes. I would recommend getting some decent ones. There are guys out there that can really do great work with pretty standard brushes. I'm not overly gifted, so I recommend getting the finest brush you can. There are many schools of thought on this. Some of the better YouTube mini painters use a larger brush, and they just manage to use the very tip of it. I have giant shaky hands, and I can't do that. So I have to use a tiny accurate brush. And of course, since we're painting minis, we're going to need a mini to paint. This is Moira. She's a character from my recently released one-shot, The Puppeteer of Veilstone. She is a young, plucky elf girl, and she's kind of an engineer. She's got a hammer, I don't know if you can tell there. She's got a tool belt with some tools in it. I've gone ahead and primed her with a darker primer on the bottom, and I've sprayed down a lighter primer on the top. That's called zenithal highlighting, or zenithal priming. That sounds fancy, but it's not. You've heard the term zenith, referring to the apex of something or the zenith. I think that's what that means. It's good enough. And you can tell that she has a lighter color on top. Let's see if I can turn this here. And a darker color on the bottom. And that highlights the various dimensions of the mini. That does two things. That makes it easier for us to see the details because they are indeed so small. And also, a little bit of your primer is going to show through unless your paint is just extremely thick. So it'll add dimension and depth and shadow to our mini. It'll just make it look better in general. I recommend using zenithal highlighting, or zenithal? Let's say zenithal, that sounds elven. I recommend using zenithal highlighting on all of your minis if you can. I just use cheap plastic primer I get at Home Depot or Lowe's or Ace Hardware. And I spray a base coat, a thin base coat. You don't really want to blur your details with too much primer. I do the darker base coat first, and then I spray a light coat from the very top. Think of it like sunlight. Next up, we're going to need light and magnification. Pretty much everybody needs these, no matter how good your eyes are. Magnification will help you see those tiny details that are just too hard to see with the naked eye, and it needs to be well lit. There are lots of fancy means of pulling this off out there, but the best advice I was ever given for painting minis is to get a pair of cheap reading glasses from Amazon and a cheap desk lamp. Guys, that's the way to do it. There are fancy lit magnifying glasses out there, but when you put something under a magnifying glass, you lose depth perception. With cheap reading glasses like these, you have your depth perception, and with your cheap desk lamp, you've got all the light you need. Next, grab yourself a paper towel, maybe two. It's really useful after you've washed off your brush to dab them down with a paper towel. You'll see me doing that a lot here really soon. You're also going to want a couple of cups. One with water to rinse your paintbrushes, and the other one with a tasty beverage. I'm drinking some nice masala chai out of my fancy N7 cup that I painted at one of those places that you paint cups. Lastly, I have some optional items. There are some hobby snips. Those are handy for snipping little barbs and protrusions that you don't want off of your minis. I've got a painter's handle. It doesn't have to be this fancy. Mine has the cool little scorpion tail on there. Pretty sure that's what it's officially called. And it's got some sticky tack on top. That just makes it easier to control your mini while you're painting it. You certainly don't need it, but it'll help you keep paint off your fingers. And I've got some various washes. A lot of people refer to washes as talent in a can, and that's because you can kind of dump this on a adequately painted model and it'll look like a pretty well painted model. Think of a wash like a loose, thin paint with a flowing agent added. That causes the paint to kind of drip into and settle in all of the cracks and crevices of your model, emphasizing shadows and details. It'll really make things pop. I don't always use a wash. I tend to paint in layers. But sometimes if I finish a model and I think that it needs a little more depth and texture, I'll throw a little wash on there sparingly. Let's get started, shall we? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mount my mini to the painter's handle using some sticky tack. I got it at a local store that rhymes with Walmart. Alright, I'm taking my Walmart brand sticky tack that I have warmed up in my hands. Is it called sticky tack? I think some people call it blue tack. But at Walmart, you get sticky tack. I'm going to press the base of my mini into the rubbery adhesive substance. Like that. That allows me to hold on to a larger handle with my big man hands. And there we go. I'm probably going to make a lot of weird faces and do a lot of weird mouth breathing. So there we go, we have our mini mounted to our painter's handle. Now, I have to warn you, I'm going to be wearing glasses during this video. And according to my wife, that is very hot. I don't really know what that means. I mean, yes, some people look better in glasses. I don't believe I do. You be the judge. How are we doing? So here's Moira. Moira is a character, like I said earlier, from my recently released one-shot. She is a plucky young elven engineer. This is exciting for me. I haven't painted Moira yet. I've had her in my imagination for over a year. And now we get to see what she's going to look like in full color. I'm going to start with a flesh tone. Moira's kind of dingy and dirty because she doesn't care about the conventions of modern cleanliness. She's a get the job done kind of person. So we're going to not only use kind of blotches of dirt colored paint, but she spends a lot of time outside, so we're going to kind of use that color palette. So I'm going to take my flesh tone, like so, and I'm going to put a little dollop of that on my wet palette. Remember when I mentioned that thumbtack earlier? It's coming in handy right now. Definitely keep one of those on hand. Thumbtack into the nozzle. Suggestive. Alright, now we're going to place a dollop of our flesh colored paint. And like I said, Moira has kind of an olive skin tone to begin with, and she spends a lot of time outside. So we're going to take a little bit of brown, kind of a medium brown here, bugbear brown from D&D brand paints, apparently. And I'm going to place that directly adjacent to the flesh tone. And what that's going to allow me to do is get a blend of those two colors. We're going to start with the darkest color first. I would suggest everyone do that, to lay down a base coat of the darkest shade of whatever you're painting at the time, and then build your way upwards with lighter and lighter colors progressively. And it may look a little weird initially. You may be thinking, oh, I'm going too light, or I'm going too dark. You'll probably think you're going too dark. That's generally what people do. But it's fine, because you can always paint over it. I mean, granted, you don't want to paint super thick, because you'll wash out the details, you'll fill in the cracks of your mini, and you won't be able to see as many details. So I'm going to start, let's see, she's barefoot, and we're going to, let's start down there. Let's start at her feet. I'm going to lean in a little bit, just to get an accurate little dollop there. And she's got kind of some high water breeches that she wears most of the time. And I'm just going to coat her left foot up to the calf. And since this is our first coat, if you spill over just a little bit, it's cool, because we're going to paint over it in finer detail later anyway. I'm going to put this under my light. Oh, the fancy cheap reading light that I was telling you about. And I'm just going to keep filling in these details. Should probably move my phone camera. But right now you're just looking at me doing tedious painting. It's actually not that tedious. I really enjoy it. This is one of my very, very favorite things to do about D&D. Involving D&D? Involving D&D. Is to take... I'm going to take a little bit of water in my red solo cup and dilute my paint just a little bit. I feel like it's coming on a little thick, a little heavy. So we're doing that. And that'll help it spread more evenly. And we won't get kind of big globs of paint. We don't want that. We want smooth, even coats. I don't know if you can tell here, but I was already starting to get some thicker layers of paint on that left foot there, and I don't want that. Alright. I'm actually going to take almost some pure water and see if I can thin out that heavier paint that I had. That's a thing you can do, by the way. And you know what? If you get a little bit too thick of paint on something, on a surface, it doesn't really matter. Because you're wearing glasses right now, like me, right? And you can see super fine details that are glaring at this level of magnification. But when you take off your glasses, it'll all look smooth and honestly kind of blurry because minis are tiny. It's like they named a mini for a reason. If anybody knows why they went with 28mm, please tell me in the comments. So Moira is a very young half-elf engineer of some kind. I'm not going to tell you much about her because I'm keeping most of this close to the vest. And if you want to learn more about Moira, you can check out my one-shot on DM's Guild. You may be asking yourself, Jesse, is this just a 20 to 30 minute commercial for your one-shot? Yes it is. No, it's not. This is about being chill and listening to some good music and painting a mini for the first time. The tunes you're hearing are from the lovely and talented Autumn Orange, a dear friend of mine. You can subscribe to Autumn Orange's YouTube channel, and I would suggest you do so. You can buy Autumn Orange albums on iTunes, and you can do like I do and listen to them on Spotify while you're driving to work and flipping people off because they don't drive fast enough for your tastes. Cool. So check that out. We have elf-colored feet. Pretty nifty. Now I'm going to work my way up to her arms. She's wearing, short sleeve shirt under some bib overall types. No, they're not. That's not a bib overall. This is a like a blacksmith's apron situation. Maybe I'll splice in some footage or some concept art of Moira. I'm actually very proud of the model. Up until recently, I had used a lot of services that are very popular and very convenient for tabletop enthusiasts like myself and very likely yourself. But Moira, it was hand-modeled lovingly and painstakingly by yours truly. Just filling out her upper arm. She doesn't wear sleeves. She's a no-nonsense, get it done, and get dirty in the process kind of elf. She probably acts more like a stereotypical dwarf, really, than an elf. I don't know if you can see this on the camera here, but I'm just working up and down her upper arm here with some very thin blend of flesh tone and medium brown. And we're going to highlight that later, but first we're just going to go over this. Now Moira is wearing some fingerless gloves. But the details on this are so tiny that what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blast this flesh tone over the entire glove area so I get her fingertips entirely. And then I'm going to go back over and just draw in those fingerless gloves with some probably darker brown. So that's what I'm doing right now, just getting a nice flesh tone on her entire hand. And this being the first coat, we don't have to be as precise as we're going to have to be later. We're going to have to be really anal later. But that's okay. We're just hanging out today. And talking about D&D, which is probably my favorite thing to talk about. My beautiful wife Laura has to listen to me talk about D&D and like character build concepts all the time. And now you have to listen to me. You don't have to, I suppose, but I'm glad you are. This is where the painter handles are really handy. I've got the miniature inverted entirely right now, and I'm able to hold on to this larger base. You don't have to have a fancy one like I'm using. I 3D printed this one off of Thingiverse. If you're not familiar with Thingiverse and you have a 3D printer, you should get well acquainted because there's a lot of handy things on there. And honestly, if you go to Thingiverse and you don't have a 3D printer, I bet you'll buy one pretty soon, because you can see all the handy dandy items that one can basically just print from nothing. It's really quite amazing. Okay, her left arm is now painted elf colored. We're going to go on to her right arm. Since I'm talking about creating characters, I kind of want to go into my favorite way to create new characters. I'm sure, like many of you, the funnest part of D&D, the most fun part of D&D, is when you're like conceptualizing your character and planning, and somebody perhaps has invited you to their campaign. Maybe they haven't, maybe you just want to design a character. I do that sometimes. And I always start from their aesthetic, what they look like, and work my way back from there. And a lot of people are like, oh, you know, I want to have a Gloomstalker Ranger or a Conquest Paladin. But me, I think about what they look like, and then I kind of get their vibe from the character I design, whether it be on Hero Forge, which is a really cool service, or Desktop Hero, another equally cool service. And I just decide what they look like, and then I go to D&D Beyond, and I look at all the cool things that my character could be. That's what I did with my current character. I'm only playing one campaign at this moment. My dear friend Kenneth invited me to play at his table, and I knew I wanted to play a half-orc. I like half-orcs. I like full orcs. I like all kinds of orcs. And so I had this visual of this kind of lean, gruff, tall, thin orc, and I kind of wrote his backstory in conjunction with what he looked like. I don't want to get too far into it because the other players at my table may not know everything and they might be watching. But he's leaner and more lithe than a lot of orcs out there. And so I had this image, but even though he may be a little more svelte, that's a good word, svelte, than a lot of orcs out there, he is probably twice as gruff as any character I've ever even attempted to play. I kind of voice him like something in between Chris Christopherson and, I don't know, some stereotypical southern tough guy. His name is Koga. That is Gaelic for war, I believe. I am Irish in descent, like most other unimpressive white guys. And so I like to use a lot of Gaelic and Irish influences in my fiction. So Koga is a half-orc, and he's really gruff, and he kind of sounds like this. I speak in the lower registers, and I lean into my southern heritage a little bit. And he's a little bit morally ambiguous. Maybe I'll throw some art up of Koga. And he started from the ground up as just this persona and this visual of this lean orc, and he carries very distinctive looking short swords. And I eventually settled on a Gloomstalker Ranger for Koga, and man, that's a great class. If you ever have the opportunity, I would highly recommend it, especially with the Tasha's new Ranger options. My dear friend Kenneth, the DM, extended that to me to use those, even though we had long since begun the campaign. I'll take a quick break and kind of show the camera here. We have our base coat on Moira's skin. You can see that I've got her arms and her hands. I went down the back of her neck and into the drawstring of her blacksmith's apron. So now I'm going to go on to, let's see, what should our next layer be? You have to kind of think about these things. It's nice to do things in layers that it doesn't matter too much if you're not super precise initially. I'm probably going to do her breeches. Then I'll come back and I'll highlight her skin. The good thing to think about is where is your light source? With minis, I like to think about the light source being kind of in front of them a little bit, but mostly directly over them. So we're going to highlight along that axis. Axis? Yeah, the Z-axis. I'm a 3D printer guy. I'm going to use a custom brown that I made. It was originally, let's see here. I don't know what it was, but now it's kind of a dark doo-doo brown, and we're going to call it doo-doo brown. So that's going to be the base coat for Moira's breeches. To quote Deadpool, you should have worn your brown pants. I know it's trite, but I really like Deadpool. I've been collecting his comics for years and years and years. I actually did a trivia recently on my dear friend Babs the Bat's channel, where I competed against the audience with Deadpool trivia, and I felt like a real heel when I won, because the guests, you don't really want them to win. You want them to kind of have fun, but then the audience gets to participate and win. And no, I crushed, because I know a lot about Deadpool. I've been reading Deadpool comics since I was very young, and I haven't kept up on it, so don't quiz me on anything that's happened in the last 5 years. Alright, I'm taking my doo-doo brown base coat. We're just going to go over her pants. That sounds really terrible. I'm going to watch this later and just cringe all over the place, but I'm not going to reshoot it because we're this far in. It's really cool to see Moira coming to life, you guys. Back to Koga. So yeah, he is a Gloomstalker Ranger. He is mechanically one of the coolest characters I've ever played. Rangers don't get a lot of love from other D&D know-it-alls like myself. I'm not really a know-it-all. I've only been playing about 2 years. but I am a fast learner and a bit of a, what is the term, try hard. I've heard the term try hard. I like that. I think that describes me to a T. And so I do a lot of theory crafting, which is where you kind of come up with these crazy builds. And with Koga, I'm using melee weapons. And people are like, oh, you know, Rangers are good at range. It's in the name. But Rangers are also very good in melee. And Gloomstalker Rangers are also very good in general. So, when you have a powerful subclass, like a Gloomstalker Ranger, and you have a fun mechanic like dual wielding, and I use his half-orc racial. Frequently when he crits, he gets to use another damage dice in the crit. And I took the Piercer trait, the new Piercer trait from Tasha's, and that allows him to roll another damage die on crits. So Koga's crits are off the charts. Now I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh man, you could make a cool crit build with Koga. And maybe I'll do that. We'll see. That's more up to the DM, and I like to be respectful of the DM's wishes. And so far, the DM has not mentioned multi-classing. And, you know, I'm sure you're thinking, oh yes, multi-class into, I believe it's Champion Fighter, and you get to crit on 19s and 20s. And, you know, there's more to D&D than just building the coolest murder machine. Although building the coolest murder machine can be a lot of fun. But as we all know, some of the best moments in D&D is when you're not doing great, and when you're not the most efficient murder machine. Alright, I think the first coat of Moira's doo-doo brown pants is pretty much on there. I'm going to let that dry. I may need to go over that again. We'll see. So let's see here. I think I'm going to do her shirt next, and that's just going to be kind of a dirty cream colored shirt. Again, I'm going to start with the darkest shade first, so we can highlight later. It's not a gratifying sound. That reminds me, it's chai time. That's been sitting there a while. I like my chai piping hot, and that was piping lukewarm. So I don't really have a cream color here, but that's okay. I've got white. And so I'm going to take my white, put a little dollop adjacent to my doo-doo brown. Take my handy dandy thumbtack because I had a nozzle clog. Is my white dried out? It's okay, I have extra white if need be. I hope you guys are enjoying this. This is a experimental video for me, and I'm glad you're here to experience this with me. I have a lot of really wild things planned for the channel once we're out of quarantine, but right now we're in quarantine. But you know, if you like this, please let me know, because I want it to be awesome for everybody involved. My white is coming out very slow, but it's coming out. Thanks for watching, by the way. This is really neat. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. I know you get tired of hearing that phrase. We all get tired of hearing that phrase, but it is how content creators put content on the table. Man, this white is being really, really stubborn. I've squeezed these so hard that happened where the lid just kind of explodes out of your paint tube and puts a big splooge of paint all over your wet palette. So, you know what? I don't need to worry about putting more white paint on my wet palette anymore. Remember when I mentioned the paper towel earlier? It's very important. This is good YouTube. This is make for good YouTube. Alright. I'm gonna go to work tomorrow with chalky white fingertips. And they'll be like, oh no, Jesse's using again. He's using modeling paint. So I'm going to take one of my brushes, kind of the larger of the three. Oh man, my doo-doo brown is well saturated with white now, so good thing we got our base coat down. I'm going to do my best to keep that from mixing entirely. And I'm just going to mix this local white with the doo-doo brown. People watching this in the future will be like, and that was the beginning of the popular color, doo-doo brown. Hope you're doing something fun in addition to listening to me prattle on about painting minis and Dungeons and Dragons. And I know you're doing one cool thing in addition. You are listening to Autumn Orange. Currently, I am not listening to Autumn Orange because the audio would be weird if I was jamming out, as the kids say, and recording audio. So I'm going to start with the base coat on Moira's undershirt. She's wearing kind of a dirty cream-colored undershirt. We're just going to paint. I'm going to paint right over the details of those really fine straps. We can come back later with a fine brush and hit those. Speaking of fine brushes, her shoulder straps are very small. So I'm going to rinse off this heavier brush right now. And I'm going to dry it off. And I'm going to come back in with an extremely fine brush that I've modified to be even finer. I've snipped off all but a few hairs on there, and it's basically a pinpoint. And I'm going to get some of my creamy beige color, and we're going to go over those shoulder straps on her undershirt here. I really cannot recommend the reading glasses highly enough, because this mini looks like it is 4 inches tall right now to me, and that's just much easier to paint. And even though I'm using these big old banana hands of mine, I can see well enough to really hit those tiny, tiny details just right. Cool. You know, her shirt isn't a big part of the model, and that's almost done now. Just, it wraps around just a little bit under her armpit. I'm going to get that right under there. And then I hit the other side. My paint's a little thicker than what I like right now, but you would not believe the amount of white paint all over my wet palette. I've thinned it out with just a drip of just tap water. I'm not fancy. Some people use paint thinner, I think is what they use, of some kind. I think there's a special variety. You know, there are probably some mini painters on the channel right now watching in abject horror. And to you, I apologize. Those of you that have been doing this for decades and know all of the ins and the outs and the nuances of painting minis. I've only been at this a couple of years. I'm pretty good, but I know there are people that have been out there doing this for much less time that are actually much better than me. And that's okay. I'm pretty good. I'm content with my skill level. I'm just kidding, I'm not. I want to be the best. Like no one ever was. She's got a little bit of midriff showing on the back there, and I kind of forgot that detail, so I'm just going to take my super fine brush, and I'm going to grab my skin base coat and go back in between her pants and her shirt. Nice. I do indeed recommend getting tiny brushes, especially if you're a beginner like me. Maybe somebody in the comments can tell me why I should learn to use larger brushes and just use the point, but I have not mastered that skill yet. There's a little bit of the top of her breeches showing over her rope belt. I modeled the rope belt, that was fun. I deformed a circle into looking like a rope and wrapped it around her waist. I'm not going to talk too much about 3D modeling. I don't think that's something that everybody's interested in. I sure think it's neat. But I think a lot of people just care more about the results, and that's fine. We are a result-oriented society. I think there's a term for that. Is it meritocracy? We're a burgeoning meritocracy, maybe. Today, we got a new president. And regardless of your feelings on the man, that's an exciting and monumentous day. And now I'm painting minis. Pretty cool. Alright. So, I've got her pant leg base coat. I've got her shirt base coat. I've got her skin base coat. I'm going to start on her apron, and I actually have a blacksmith's apron. I've done a little bit of forging with a friend. And they're kind of this ugly yellowy brown color, so I'm going to take some yellow, and mix that with my pre-made doo-doo brown. That's going to be the name of my next YouTube channel. So I'm just going to drop that right on my wet palette. I don't need a lot. I don't need nearly this much. I'm using obscene amounts of paint. And for all of you pro painters out there, shh. I know, I get it. Add a little bit of water. And just mix that brown with that yellow. And you're asking, Jesse, isn't this anachronistic? Aren't you designing her blacksmith's apron after a modern one? Yes, I am. It's Dungeons and Dragons, and it's all fake anyway. I can do what I want. And I bet you that Dark Ages and medieval blacksmith aprons have not changed too much compared to their modern equivalents. Alright, I'm actually going to use that larger brush because we're going to start on the blacksmith's apron, and that's a larger detail. So, I'm going to do a thing, and a lot of the guys and gals, I apologize, and everybody involved, it is not a gender-specific hobby. Do this thing where they make a finer point on their paintbrush with their mouth, and it works really good, and it doesn't taste great, and sometimes you have weird streaks on your lips, and I'm going to do that. Don't judge me. Matt Mercer does it, and probably other people. And if it's good enough for Matt Mercer, it's good enough for me, and it's good enough for you, damn it. Alright, now we've got a nice point on our larger brush, and I'm going to begin applying our yellowish brown that we just mixed up to her smock. And I can already tell that's too yellow and I don't like it. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to rinse my brush off. I'm going to go back in and I'm going to mix more of our custom doo-doo brown. God, I'm going to really regret calling it that by the end of this video. And I'm going to really regret calling it that after I see the comments of this video. Alright. Got a lot more brown mixed in with the yellow there. Too much on the paintbrush. Rinse off my paintbrush, dab it off. It's got a frayed end. I think there's a term for that. I think it's paint liquor. And yeah, I'm that. I guess there's a sweet show if you subscribe to Critical Role on Twitch, and I suggest you do, because they're probably the reason half of us are here, if not more. And it's called Mini Prime Time, and it's awesome, and you should watch it. The personalities on there are worth the price of admission alone. Okay, I'm still getting a little bit too much yellow. I'm not pleased with that. So I'm just going to mix more brown in. I think you can see this on my cam over here. And I'm going to start hitting that. There we go. That's the color I was after the whole time, you guys. Just kind of a yellowish piece of hide that you drape off the front of you, and it holds your tools and it keeps sparks from burning through you. Let me get this a little closer to my lamp, because I'm doing the edges now, and I don't want yellowish brown to bleed over onto her shirt or her pants. And we're going to go back over this later with a lighter color to really pick up the details. I don't know if I'm going to dry brush this or manually highlight it. We'll kind of see what we're feeling like and how long this is taking. While we're talking, you know, tell me in the comments how long you've been painting your minis. If you have been. If you haven't, let me know if this is inspiring you to try. I'm usually available on my Twitter, at Jesse Jurdak. If you have questions or concerns or comments or derogatory statements about not only my painting technique, but my custom names for my custom colors. Alright, so I've got the lion's share of her blacksmith's apron painted the base color now. I'm going to go back and take my finer brush, and I'm going to fill in the minor details, just so we don't bleed over too much on the rest of her garment. She's got a crossed strap over the back of her shirt, and for that, this tiny brush is just right. She's gonna look pretty cool, you guys. Kind of a monochromatic color scheme, but she is not about the flashy colors. She is about making cool shit and doing cool shit. That's a cool way to be. It's also cool if you like flashy colors. I think there needs to be more of that. I don't have a lot of color in my wardrobe. You'll probably notice that watching my videos. You'll notice that I've got a lot of V-necks and Henleys in kind of modest colors. That's kind of my aesthetic, at least for now. At this point in my life, I dig it. It's a good look for big, bulky dudes, I think. I don't know. I can't wear a lot of layers. I'm big. You put layers on a big guy, and I just look bigger. I don't want to look bigger, I want to look normaler. What's normal, right? Normal's dumb. But I don't want to look larger. I am large enough, I feel. I am 6'8" and 305 pounds right now. That fluctuates between about 295 at my lightest and maybe 315 at my heaviest, depending on what time of the year it is and what kind of cosplays I have coming up, whether I need to be larger or smaller. That's probably not a real healthy mentality. I think you should just kind of be who you are and be happy who you are. Also, if it makes you happy to challenge your body, then do that. Just don't criticize other people for whatever they do with theirs, you know? Be cool, y'all. You guys are cool. I don't need to tell you this. Preaching to the choir here. Nice. Alright, I think our base coat for her blacksmith's apron is mostly done. It looks kind of simple right now. We haven't done any highlighting. But we've got our darkest tones down. Now I need to, let's see here, I'm going to make her belt the same color as her blacksmith's apron, because I don't want to mix up a fourth base coat just for a tiny rope belt. Maybe I just won't highlight that enough. Highlight. Maybe I won't highlight that as much as the other parts of her wardrobe. And that'll make it look like a standalone piece. That's a trade secret, and you can take that to the bank. I like it when people say that you can take that to the bank. I can't take anything to the bank. I do everything on my phone nowadays. I don't even know where my bank is. Cool. Alright, our blacksmith's apron is done. Now we're going to do a base coat for Moira's hair. I kind of think she's got kind of a reddish, kind of unwashed thing going. She's probably got, you know, axle grease and brass shavings in her hair, but it's got kind of a naturally reddish tone. And I have this one right here. It is a Carne Oscura from Game Color. Shout out to Game Color. And carne means meat, I think. And so I'm going to mix that with a little bit of brown to get kind of a reddish, it's already kind of a brownish red, but we want a reddish brown. And we're going to use that for the base coat of Moira's hair. And so I'm actually, because it's such a small amount, I'm going to mix that with my smaller brush. But not too much water there, Jess. You don't want it to be. I call myself Jess. I actually don't like that when people call me Jess. I like Jessie. It's a pretty good name. It's not so uncommon that, you know, people can't pronounce it. They always misspell it. I don't put an I in it. There's no I in team, and in my case, there's no I in Jessie. Alright, we've got a little bit of brown, a little bit of Carne Oscura, and we're going to apply that to her hair. Because I designed her and I'm a hack, I gave her cool steampunk goggles, because nothing says engineer like steampunk goggles, so I'm going to try and avoid those, but she has like a little tendril of hair coming down, and it's going to be difficult to avoid that. So I'm going to carefully, with just a tiny speck of paint, outline that little tendril of hair. I got it pretty good, you guys. And then I'm going to avoid the strap of her steampunk goggles. And I've got that done. I've got her little ponytail. She kind of got her hair just kind of pulled up and out of her way. I'm doing pretty good. Am I making weird faces? I bet you I am. I'm making weird concentration faces. Doing a lot of mouth breathing. And what else am I doing that's weird? Let me know in the comments. And let's give me a complex. We'll make a thing of it. Neat. Ah, she looks cool, guys. Man. From imagination to a 3D rendering program. In this case, I designed her in Blender. If you're looking to get into 3D modeling, I suggest getting familiar with Blender. It's free. It's ridiculously powerful. And you can use it for other things like animations and making cute D&D minis. So here she is. We've got our base coat down for our hair. I need to give her a glasses strap. We need to go over her goggle lenses. And we need to color the handle of her hammer. And we need to decide what color the head of her hammer is. I'm thinking brass. It's probably not a great material to make a hammer out of. I don't know. You can let me know. But it's going to look neat. Okay. Let's go ahead and take just our doo-doo brown. And that's going to be the handle of our hammer. That's a tiny detail. So I need to be very precise here. Shh, guys. I'm being precise. So you have to whisper. That helps. This is an earlier print of Moira, and the handle of her hammer is extremely thin. In the release version, I made it a little thicker so you could print it, and it would not be as prone to breakage. That being said, if you step on it, it will break. That's what they told Kevin Costner. If you step on it, it will break. If you get that reference, you're old or you like baseball. And there's a little point on top of her hammer where the handle comes through. Neat. Got it, guys. I got it. I'm proud of me. Cool. Now it's time to... I think I'm going to use that same brown for her goggle strap. Oh man, that is the name of my next gnome character. Goggle strap. Maybe like, Pithkin Goggle Strap. It's a banger of a gnome name, you guys. Alright, you know what I'm going to do? Just to make the goggle strap pop a little more, I'm going to add a touch of black. Oh, that's not black. I'm going to have to take off my dad shades here and find my black. Perfect. I have left that somewhere else. That's fun. You know what I'm going to not do is add a touch of black. I'm going to add a touch of roja. Yep, that's right. I'm going to add some red. Nope, because her hair is red and it'll look dumb if I do that. We're not going to do that. I'm going to talk myself through this. Maybe a touch of blue. That's what we're going to do. Blue. Blue works, right? So I'm going to shake up my paint. You'll notice I just do this like every time. Somebody's going to GIF that and it's going to look really obscene. Cool. YouTube censors are going to show up. I'll just be like, I was mixing paint, y'all. And they'll be like, whatever, pervert. Taking my handy dandy thumbtack. There's techniques for avoiding having to do that. People have neat little paint pots that they use and they put stainless ball bearings in there. I hear that's important, is to use stainless. And they don't have to do all this crap that I'm doing, but I only paint minis about once a month. Unless I'm doing in-person D&D, which I'm currently not. Because there's a pandemic and I want to be responsible. It is breaking my heart though, because I like all the little bits and baubles. I like 3D terrain tiles, and I like painting minis, and I like things that you can put your hands on. I like dice. Who doesn't like dice, right? I am not your stereotypical dice goblin, however. I do love dice, but I have never bought a pair of dice? A set of dice. I've never bought a set of dice for myself. All of mine are gifts. And I have decided to continue that tradition through my entire tabletop gaming career, lifespan, I don't know, what do you want to call it? So I've mixed my medium blue with my custom brown. And it made kind of a dark blackish brown anyway, so I'm glad I didn't mix it with black. And that's going to be the color of her goggle strap. Goggle strap. I'm telling you. Gnome. Let's see here. What's the kind of wizard I want to make? Do I want to make a wizard? I don't know if I want to make a wizard. I don't know. One of the best YouTubers out there, in my opinion, is Chris Honkla, or Treon Monk as he's known. And he is a theory crafter extraordinaire. And he loves wizards. And I know why. I mean, they're great. They can learn more spells than anybody, I think. And they probably get more spell slots than anybody, and the way they can learn spells is neat, where they can learn from books. But that, I've yet to see a wizard class that really, really appeals to me, or a subclass. It's all about the subclasses, right? Because wizards and wizards and wizards are all different. You could be there's some new ones. There's the scribe wizard is pretty cool. I might, if I do a wizard, I might make a scribe. I like the abilities that are just basically RP abilities, and they don't really make your character more BA per se. But the scribe wizard has this cool floating quill that, you know, I would just use to annoy the hell out of my DM at the time. And be like, no, I wrote it with my quill, you can't get rid of it. Or, I wrote it with my quill, I can get rid of it. Cool, so I gave her a little bit of an aggressive goggle strap there, but that's okay. We're going to paint over that with a little of our base coat, and it'll go right away. So, the last thing I need to hit with a base coat is, is the head of her hammer. Is that in focus there? We need to hit that hammer head. And I'm going to use this nifty, what is this? This is Glorious Gold. Was I just reading the Spanish name for this? I was. Carne Oscura. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that. I like Spanish. That is dark flesh tone, but dark flesh tone is not nearly as cool as Carne Oscura. That's badass. Living with Carne Oscura. Carne. I can't roll my R's as well as I should. So, anyway, the head of the hammer is going to be this glorious gold. And I might do that in close proximity to some of our browns here, because I don't want my gold to be that glorious. So I might mix in a little brown with that and make it a slightly less glorious gold and make it more of a benign bronze. Yeah, benign bronze. That's what we're getting here. Cool. Don't need a lot of that. I already have too much paint on my very fine brush. So I'm going to clean it off, get a nice point going, get just the smallest smidge on there, because the hammer is another fine, fine detail. And we're just going to hit that with this little glob of gold. The pro model painters right now are losing their minds because he put metallic paint on his wet palette. You're not supposed to do that because the flecks of, I think it's gypsum that goes into metallic paint, will actually get down into your sponge and leach into the other colors, making them kind of metallic as well. And you don't really want to do that. But I can afford another sponge. I've got money. I know about sponges. And also because I forgot to bring my other palette over in front of the camera here. And I don't really want to get up, because I've got my framing so nice. Cool, we've got ourselves a bronze hammerhead. It's a little too glorious, but it's fine. I'm going to take the same benign bronze that we just made, mix it with a little water, because that was kind of thick and gloppy. It's okay for a hammerhead, but we're going to go in there, and I'm actually going to make the casings of her lenses more of a bronze color as well. The lens is on her goggle strap. Pithkin goggle strap. Is he a scribe's wizard? No. Oh, Pithkin goggle strap could be a artificer. I looked into the artificer, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong. I'm dubious about the artificer. I think RP wise, awesome. But you know what? RP wise, everything is awesome, isn't it? Cool. I'm just got a little glob of bronze surrounding her goggles here. I've made a little bit of a mess of her hairline. I'm going to come back in there and clean that up. The base coat for her hair now. I don't know if you can see that or not. We'll see if this is not a cam. This is my dumb phone. We'll see if my phone here is doing an adequate job of being kind of a close-up view. I think it's a little dark. We'll see. So you can see that. Well, maybe you can see. I hope you can see that I've globbed too much of this dark bluish brown for her goggle strap over her hairline, and that's okay because it was a thin enough coat that I can just take the base coat for her hair and go back over it. It's fine. Fixed it, y'all. It's no biggie. No big. Gotta be really precise. Shut up. He's painting. Cool. And I think it leaked. Yeah, it ran down her head just a little bit. Not too much. Oh, she's looking so cute. Okay. Guys, the base coats are all finished. And you can stop there if you want. I'm not gonna. But that is a perfectly adequate mini for just about any table. And honestly, you're probably going to be the only one that looks this close. But we're going to keep going. Because now that we have a base coat, there's a few things we can do. If we wanted to hurry, we could just slap some wash over that. Ta-da! I've got a mild brown, mid-brown, from Quickshade. And, I'm sorry, from Army Painter. And we could slap that on basically all of this. We could just glop it on there. It would darken the whole model a little bit, and then it would fill in the cracks, and you would see the details. It would look pretty cool. So that's one thing you can do. I like to highlight. I like to take a little bit of white or a little bit of a lighter color and mix it in with my base coat and build up layer by layer, and that just gives you a little bit of it gives you depth. And I'm by no means an expert at this. So let's start building off the base layer of her skin tone. I'm seeing now where I missed a spot or two on her base coat. So I'm going to just take my normal base coat. I'm going to go back over the areas that I think are just a hair thin. It's on the back of her neck, I feel, is just a little thin. I'm just going to go back over that and make sure we have a nice base coat, because if you highlight on top of a weak-ass base coat, then your highlight will show whatever you primed with. And you primed, right? Yeah, you did. Priming is important. If you don't know what primer is, it's basically a paint that you paint on first, and that provides a surface to which other paints can adhere. And it's more important than you might think. It really, it really allows paint to stick to the surface of a thing. Imagine that. You know what? She has a little scar on her cheek, and we're going to paint that too. Why does she have a scar, Jesse? You know what? If there were only a nifty one-shot module for an affordable price on DM's Guild. There is. Also, if you have no interest in running a module, I don't blame you. It's a lot of work to be a DM. DMs, I think, need a little more love out there, because it's such an effort to conduct a D&D or a Pathfinder or just a tabletop session. There's other varieties of tabletop. There's, I think, Call of Cthulhu. Did you say Cthulhu? I say Cthulhu. I pronounce the H. Some people say like Thulu. I like the H. I'm an H guy. And there's lots of cool systems out there. I don't know where I was going with that. And I just got to naming all of the tabletop systems out there and kind of lost my track of thought. Because really what I'm doing is concentrating on covering anything I might have missed on her base coat. I should have taken those snips I showed you in the video earlier under this magnified light and cleaned up this model just a hair. She's got some printer artifacts along the back of her arm and on the backs of her hands. In fact, I'm going to do that now because we're just at the base coat stage. So, handy snips. I don't think I'll be able to show you this because I don't think I can get close enough, but there are some tiny print artifacts on the back of her hand, and I'm just going to use the very edge of my snippers here. Put the flat side against the model. Just trim those off. I modeled her fingers to be very thin. A lot of professional services out there don't allow you to print model parts this thin because it does indeed make them fragile. But we all know that these are not action figures. We all know that these are micro pieces of art. And we want to be very careful with them because we love them. So, if you print one of my models, it will have roughly proportional fingers and things. And this is not to diminish the other services out there. They need to reach a wide audience. I need to reach a wide audience too, but I have no delusions of grandeur. Alright, so now that I've snipped off those printer artifacts, they're just little remnants of my supports. I am going to go back over the area that I've recently damaged. Done. Good as, not new, but it's pretty good. Pretty good, y'all. Alright, our base coat is largely complete. Cool. Let's start highlighting. I'm going to do that. And since we started with a base coat on her skin, we're going to start highlighting on her skin. And I'm going to take, you know what? There's plenty of white on my palette because I had a paint bottle explosion. And there is now paint on the dinner table. And that's why I'm not allowed to paint minis on the dinner table, especially without a drop cloth. Don't tell my wife this is happening. That probably doesn't sound too good on the microphone. I'll have to clean this up after I done. Cool. I'm going to take a little bit, you know what, of white. Yeah, take just a tiny bit of white. It doesn't take much. And I'm going to mix that with my medium brown and flesh tone mixture. Doesn't need to be much. Don't want to go crazy with it. Especially if you want to build up gradually, which I commonly do about 3 shades. I usually go a base coat, a slightly lighter coat, and a top coat. And I build lighter and lighter. You don't have to do that. It's a lot of work, but it makes things look neat if you do it well. If you do it poorly, like I do sometimes. That was poorly articulated. Then, you know, if you mess up your highlights, then they look weird. So we're saying the light comes from the front of Moira here and downwards. So we're going to hit the tops of her feet, the fronts of her shins, then hit her shoulders, the tops of her hands, tops of her arms, her forehead, the bridge of her nose, and her cheekbones. Maybe her chin. And that's going to give her depth. She already has depth of character, you guys. Cool. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to allow that to dry before I hit that with a third coat because I don't want it to be too highlighted. Maybe I'll get the, I'm being really neat here, the tops of her ankle protrusions. There's probably a name for that. It's probably ankle. Cool. Alright, rinse that off because my paint's getting a little thick. I'm gonna rub my brush on my paper towel there. Get just a little bit more. These are details, so we don't need to be heavy-handed when we paint her heavy hand. Alright, I'm going to get the fronts and tops of her fingers, and her thumb, and her palm. I have a little bead of paint on my fine brush here, and that's what I'm painting with. It's literally just kind of clinging to the brush, and I'm dragging it along the edge of the model. I'm not really bending the bristles of my brushes back. Bending the bristles of my brushes back. Can't believe I said that without stuttering. Did I say that without stuttering? It's about 2:30 in the morning right now. That's when I do my best work because I have ADHD. And my brain doesn't really start operating until about 10 p.m. Oh, her highlights are looking neat, y'all. Even though the sun is coming from the front, I'm going to get the back of her arm here a little bit just to give it a little more texture, a little more depth. I'm going to get the bottom of her forearm just a little bit, not a lot. Cool. She's already popping so much more. It's so ridiculous what just a tiny amount of highlighting will do. Now I'm going to get her forehead, the bridge of her nose, and her cheekbones if I can. They're real small. Now a lot of people, including myself, would say, Jesse, shouldn't you be doing the eyes first? To which I say yes, but I forgot. So we're going to have to take the head of a pin, which is what I use when I forget, and do her eyes. I got a little heavy-handed with a highlighter there and brushed it right across the recess of her cheekbone. We don't want that. So I'm going to take a damp but not wet brush and just remove a little bit of the paint that I had applied to her cheekbone. And that way I don't blur out that detail. Pretty neat. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get the tip of her chin. Yeah. I'm going to hit those cheekbones one more time. And the tip of her nose. Cool. Going over her shoulders again. Tips of her fingers again. Top of her hand over here again. And I'm going to hit fronts of her calves. See a little spot that I missed on the base coat of her pant leg. So we're just going to hit that now. Because we're going on to highlighting and we don't want to have primer showing at this point. Some of you may actually highlight as you go. Some people do that. I hear where they start with the legs and they do their base coat and then they do their mid coat, their top coat, and then they move on to a different body part or a different piece of the model. I don't do that. I mean, I don't know. I'm worried I'm going to paint over something or mess something up. So I don't do that. Since I have a little bit of base coat for her pant legs on the brush, I'm going to head in. Apply that over the rest of her pants. So there's a nice steady, consistent base coat. You don't want streaks. Streaks, unless you do want streaks. Maybe you do want streaks. Maybe that's the aesthetic you're going for. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not the guy. All right. I am content with the base coat. Now I've got a little bit of highlighting on her skin. Since I've got some wet base coat on her pant leg, I'm going to skip that part for now, and I'm going to come back to it once it's dried. So we're going to do highlighting on her blacksmith's apron. So I'm going to take some of our yellow that we mixed with the doo-doo brown earlier, and I'm going to get part of it on the palette that has a little less brown and a little more yellow in it. And I'm going to run it along the top edges where the light would shine. And along any protruding ripples in the fabric. I guess the apron is probably heavy leather. In fact, I created the character. I should know this. The apron is heavy leather. And I'm just going to go over all these protruding details. This paint's a little too thin. I think you've seen me be pretty liberal with thinning it out with water, and maybe that's why people don't use water. I'm open to suggestions. Alright, so I've basically hit the top part of her bib here. It's not a bib, it's an apron. It's the second time I've done that. Cool. And I'm going to let that dry. Now that our pants are dry, I'm going to highlight there as well. She's really coming along now, you guys. I don't know if you can tell. She looks pretty cute. I'm really happy. Missed a little bit of the top coat of her pant leg, of course. In one of those just hard to reach recesses. Remember when we had recess? That was cool. Remember when kids could go to school and not worry about pandemics? That was cool. Probably edit that out. That's not good for relaxing listening. Nice. Alright. So I'm going to take a little bit of white, mix it in with my base coat of brown, and that's just going to lighten it just a little bit. Some people mix just a lighter brown with the darker brown. And that makes it much more precise and easily regulatable. Regulatable? Gradient, but as I showed you in the video earlier, I don't actually have that many paints. She also has patches on her pants. We're going to hit those after we do some highlighting. But those are so tiny that I want to be cautious. And I'll probably highlight those individually. So the bottom of her breeches are frayed outward, so I'm hitting the tops of those frays. Frays? Sure. Why not? Whatever happened to the fray? They had some pretty good singles. They're alright. They're local to my hometown of Denver. I mention that a lot, but I'm not like you're a Denver guy. I'm not a sports guy, so I don't really know about our local sports competitors. I am large, but I am not a sports. But if you are a sports, that's okay. I'm going to hit the ridge of her butt a little bit, just to highlight it. Not to be weird, but it's just nice to add some shape to things. The ridge, the top part, I don't know what to call it. The top butt, I think is the term in the dictionary of butts. I'm being kind of liberal with the highlighting on the pants because I don't want them to appear flat. I didn't put a lot of detail work into the actual 3D model, so I'm going to have to fill in the blanks with paint. And if you do this, you might want to consider doing that as well. Cool. I'm happy with how she's turning out, you guys. So we've got our pants with a mid-tone highlight. We've got our apron with a mid-tone highlight. We've got our skin with a mid-tone highlight. I'm going to hit her hair. And then I'll probably start with our final highlights, because I don't think I'm going to highlight her hammer or the handle of her hammer. Some people are out there and they can do that. Remind me to paint on. You know what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to paint on her fingerless gloves. That's a good idea. Whoever put that in my head. I'm just going to take that pure medium brown. I haven't used that as a standalone pigment yet. Pigment? That sounded fancy. I'll say pigment. And I'm going to hit the palms and the backs of her hands. And then that's just going to look like fingerless gloves. It'll be cool. Trust me, it'll be cool. Don't tell Mom. Yeah. Neat. Fingerless gloves are cool. Why do we all think fingerless gloves are cool? We all do it. We all think fingerless gloves are cool. Was there a character in the 80s or 90s that we looked up to or identified with that had them? Probably. Some of you watching may not have been of television watching age in the 80s and 90s. Thanks for being here. You make me feel old, but I still value your time. Make sure to hit your reading lamp with the back of your brush. It's an insider technique. I'm not content with the contrast between her skin tone and that medium brown, so I'm actually going to hit that with my darker brown. It's a thing you can do, especially on a character like Moira here, who's not pristine in her garb. Cool. Sorry about that. Alright, so we've got one fingerless glove. We're going to hit the other hand here. And I might actually highlight those gloves later too. I know it sounds crazy because it's such a tiny piece, but those little details can really take your mini painting to the next level. People will notice them even if they don't know that they're noticing them. They'll be like, oh man, this looks neat. And you'll be like, it's because I highlighted her fingerless gloves. Noob. Just realized that I am painting the handle of her hammer the same color as her gloves. That's not going to be a lot of contrast, but I think her fingers will interrupt those colors enough that it'll be alright. It's really coming along, you guys. She looks neat. Okay, I'm going to highlight her hair now. And I'll probably only do one coat of highlight on her hair. I'm going to take my Carne Oscura. Awesome. And I'm going to mix that with a little bit of straight up red. Carefully, y'all. And do we have a nozzle clog? Let's find out. Moment of truth. We do not. Neat. And I'm going to be very light-handed with our red here that can take over pigments really aggressively if you're not cautious. We don't want that. We just want just a tiny, tiny, tiny pop of it. I'm going to throw in a little bit of white too, because I have white to spare. Not only in my dance moves, which are terrible, by the way. I'm good at many things. Dancing is not one of them. Cool. All right, I've got my hair highlight blend. If I'm just absolutely horrifying any of you pro painters out there, please let me know. So I'm going to go over the top of her head here because that's where she's getting the most sun. Neat. I'm going to get the top of her ponytail. Thusly, let's see here, can we see? We can see, it's kind of backlit, sorry about that. Most of this footage is going to be absolutely rubbish. Anyway, let's see what I can edit in later. We'll edit in good footage of somebody else painting a good mini, and I'll be like, look at the neat Goliath I made. Cool. And I'm going to do, she has like that little tendril of hair coming down because you gotta put that on things because it's neat looking. And I'm going to hit that with my highlighter too just to make that pop just a little bit.
More anxious to get there.
Yeah, that's such a fine detail. I'm gonna have to, like paint, gross. Vitamin P for paint. Nice, knocked it out of the park. All right, I'm gonna take that same, oh I'm not, I'm gonna come back later and do eyebrows and eyeballs. God, I hate doing eyes at the end, that was a mistake. Do them at the beginning, you gotta do your eyes at the beginning. But I didn't, and I have regrets. Because it's so much harder to do the eye details at the end. So, let's see here, we've got highlight, shirt. I have not highlighted her shirt. All right, so I've got this cream color. I'm gonna mix that with just a little more white. And I've got almost a pure white now. Just blend that out on my palette a little bit. I'm just gonna hit the edges of her shirt. Just to make sure that the world knows we know about more than one color. We know about more than one color, huh guys? Yeah, world. Okay, perfect. I'm just going to run that along the edges of her tank top here, along the top edge there. I just put a big blob on the back of her hand. We'll have to fix that in a moment. Mistakes were made. Cool. See the big blob of white on the back of her hand? I did that on the internet. So I'm going to take some water on a damp sponge, or I'm sorry, on a damp brush, and try and wick that up a little bit. Can I do it? Maybe a little bit. I don't know. It's kind of spreading it out. We don't want to do that. We're going to take one of our dry brushes here, and we're just going to see if we can pull that off. We thinned it a little bit, but we got to go back over that now. I'm sure there are really good painters out there just gasping in horror at the travesty unraveling before them. To you I say, I am sorry. This is more about communication than it is about my painting skills. We're just communicating. These tunes are pretty good, huh? Yeah, they are. Autumn Orange is the neatest. I use neat a lot. My family makes fun of me for it. I use it in really inappropriate contexts, like when my wife was doing cool, sexy things, I'm like, neat. And she's like, neat. And I'm like, yeah, neat. She's like, okay. Talk about my wife a lot because I like her a lot. She's really cool. She's super duper smart. I was kind of arrogant about how smart I was as a kid, like all G&T kids are, right? But my wife is so much smarter than me, and it's humbling until you just kind of lean into the curve, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm living with a genius, and then you just get to rely on her brilliance, and it's awesome. So we've highlighted her hair, we've highlighted her shirt. Now I'm going to go back with my final layer of highlighting on her skin. You know what I'm going to do before I do that? I'm going to draw her eyes. That way. Nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to, gosh, can you feel the internal turmoil of the conflict here? Yeah, you can. So I'm going to take the lightest pigment I'm going to use on her skin, and I'm going to apply that very sparsely to areas I've already highlighted. You don't want to take your lightest color and apply it to your base coat. You only want to hit your mid-tones, unless you have a very steep incline, which I do not. I'm going to hit her forehead just a little bit, tip of her nose, cheekbones, chin, tips of her fingers, just along that upper edge there, the back of her thumb, maybe just a thin line across the top of her arm and the tips of her shoulders. Cool, she's looking neat, you guys. Cool. I see some spaces where I missed, and it's driving me a little crazy, but we're not gonna fret too much. She's looking neat. A lot of people do what they call dry brushing. I like dry brushing too, but I feel like manually hitting your highlights is just a little more precise. I don't know. You'll have to let me know in the comments. I do use dry brushing. I use it mainly on terrain pieces and things that don't have to have so much precision. People are going to look at the model when I post it and be like, why did you care about precision, Jess? This is a disaster. And I'll be like, cool. I think she's looking cool. I'm going to do a little bit of a lighter highlight on her pant leg, and a little bit of a lighter highlight on her apron. I'm going to take my doo-doo brown, mix that with some medium brown now. A little bit of white, no white. I'm going to highlight her pant legs just very sparsely in areas that I think the sun might pick up, like tops of her knees maybe, and the frays on the edges of her high waters here. And looks cute. I use neat and I use cute. I talk like your favorite aunt, and I'm a really good cook. You can call me Aunt Jessie anytime. And I'm going to do just a little bit at the top of her belt line here. Yeah. I'm doing little downward strokes. I'm not doing a single stroke across. I'm doing like just to add a little bit of variance. I do just the very top of her hamstring there. When you highlight the top of the hamstring, that makes it look like there's a shadow under the booty. And that makes it look a little more pronounced. I don't know why I'm pronouncing the booty so much. I'm a millennial. That's a thing we do. We're butt people. I don't know. What's that about? Hit the tops of those knees again, just a little bit. Nice. All right. I'm going to call those pant legs done. I'm going to call her skin tone done. I'm going to highlight her apron a little bit. A little bit of the gray from my primer is peeking through on the apron, and I don't hate that. I'm not mad at it, because we want the apron to be kind of dingy and musty and, you know, other words that end in a Y. We want that. So I'm mixing a little bit of white into my apron color, which is yellow and kind of a dark, I'm gonna stop calling it doo-doo brown. It's like a chocolate brown with a little bit of green in it. I don't know. Doo-doo brown, shut up. I'm gonna call it doo-doo brown. I changed my mind. Sticking to my guns on that. It's gonna be a thing, you guys. Cool. I've got my highlight tone, and I'm just gonna go along the edges of the apron, especially where the fabric is bending outwards, and I'm gonna hit the tops of her apron pockets. And we get to do the detail work, and that's very fun. Unless you hate detail work, and then it's awful. The more you know. Gonna go along, I'm gonna highlight the outer edges where I think the sun might appear. The bottom edge bends outward just a little bit, so I'm going to hit that with my highlighter. That's just going to give it an illusion of depth. There already is depth, but I put little scissors and paintbrushes into this apron in the 3D model. And if you look at the 3D model file when you purchase that one shot, you'll be able to see them. But they are so minute that it is very hard to see them. If you print this at the recommended 31 millimeters, I think is what I went with. I think that's what you print Moira at, is 31 millimeters. It doesn't have to be precise. You want Moira to be the second tallest out of my series of minis that I released with the Puppeteer of Veilstone. There's a little bit of a gap behind her blacksmith's apron here, and I want you to be able to see that. And so I'm actually, this should have been covered with the base coat, but I want to go even a little darker. So I'm actually doing a shadow after the fact. You're supposed to lay down your shadows first, but I just realized I wanted this little darker tone right here, just to stand out a little bit and give this blacksmith's apron a little more dimension. And I don't regret doing it. I'm actually going to hit the underside of her bib just a little bit with that same darker tone. Maybe just in a few spots. It's under highlighting, you're not supposed to do that. Oh, and this is why I got a little too aggressive with it. Now I have a shadow creeping up over a surface, so I need to take that down a little bit. The damp brush, it worked out okay. Cool. Cool. She looks so neat, you guys. D&D is fun. I very much miss playing in person. I think VTTs are awesome. I love virtual tabletops, and I think it's a great way to continue playing through the pandemic. And I don't suggest that you play in person right now. I mean, I'm not your boss. You do you, but we're all trying to get through this alive and well, mostly well. And so, anyway. I'm thankful for the fantastic VTTs out there, like the Roll20s and the other ones. And I'm giving all sorts of free shout-outs to things. Maybe I'm giving all sorts of free copyright violations to things, I don't know. I think telling people that a product is good is probably legal. We'll find out. I check my email and it's my lawyer. I'm just kidding, I don't have a lawyer. Kind of evening out her skin a little bit. I got a little aggressive with the highlighting, and I want to to make sure that we have nice even skin tone before I draw on those facial details. She's an elf and I have to make sure that I hit the tips of those ears. And I'm actually going to hit that with my highest layer of highlight because we want to draw attention to elf ears. If ever you can draw attention to elf ears, draw attention to elf ears, you guys. Super important. They're so small. Nice. Oh, so cute. God. Can't even freaking handle it, you guys. I forgot I put a little tendril of hair on the other side of her head. So we're going to hit that with our remaining hair highlight pigment, which I have just enough of to run down just under her goggles. And a little bit of water on my brush, and there we go. It made my ear pink. I'm gonna have to go back over that ear in a second. Let everything dry off, and then I'll go back over that. Ugh, revolting. Dry off your brushes before you put paint on there. That's a lesson that I apparently needed to learn again. When you're mixing different kinds of paints too, you're likely to get some weird separation. So that might not have been water, that might have been whatever the liquid in paint is. We just call it paint. There we go. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been relaxing. I kind of lost my mellow and relaxing tones, and I kind of got excited about nerd shit and started nerding out with you guys. Thanks for playing along. That was cool. Alright, now I'm going to fix my... I don't know if you can tell, I made her ear pink because my paint was too wet when I was doing the highlight on her hair, and so the excess moisture from the brush ran up her ear with the red pigment, and now she's just got like a wicked sunburn on that ear, and now it is better. Okay, so she's almost done. We need to put the patches on her pants. We need to make the tools in her tool belt a metallic color, and we need to draw some facial features on there. I'm going to save that for last. I'm going to save that till I'm really tired. Strategy. So she has some wrenches crammed into the pocket of her blacksmith's apron. I'm going to take this nice gunmetal and make her wrenches a gunmetal. It's actually a little lighter than gunmetal. It's kind of just a darker silver color. And we're gonna barely hit the edge of those tiny details with that dark silver. We don't need much on the brush, and we certainly don't need much pressure crushing down on us. There we go. And I am literally using one bristle to do this. But I am using Goliath hands, so we'll see. There may be people out there with finer small muscle control that can do this kind of thing more reliably. But I made the model too, you guys. She has some scissors, tiny scissors in the very top of her bib. I'm going to try and hit that. Oh god, it's so little. I'm barely dragging this brush over that detail. Okay, it's kind of a glob. It's fine. And there are some paintbrushes in the top of her blacksmith's apron. I'm going to hit that with that dark brownish bluish color. God, they're so small. Perfect. All right. Need a real sow's ear of that. No, that's fine. It's good enough. It's fine. Great. I think it's time for facial details. No. I'm actually going to take a little bit of green and make the patches on her pants. I figure Moira is innovative and she just used whatever was handy to patch up any holes that she may have burned or cut in her britches while building neat stuff. I'm going to mix that green with a little bit of medium brown. I don't like how strong it is. If you want to have really strong contrasting colors, that's cool. My aesthetic is kind of more muted tones. You probably see that across my models I showed at the beginning of this video. Okay, so she's got a patch on her pant leg, on the left knee, on the right backside, and I think I put one on her apron here. Let me see. I did. So I'm just going to take just a tiny little square of this brownish green that we just mixed up. And if it becomes a base coat for a brighter color, then that's fine. Because I am not liking how little contrast I had there. I may build that up a little bit more with a stronger tone. We'll see. It's subtle. I'm going to keep it, guys. Alright, so we've got a patch on her left knee, on her apron, on the back here. Cool. Facial details, and then Moira is complete. I will post a pic of her. I actually like to take a lot of mini painters don't do this. I like to take a varnish or a sealant and hit it at the end, and it does change a lot of your colors. In my experience, it makes them pop and distinguish themselves a little more. I like that, but it's kind of a random effect. So if you like to roll dice like I do, hit that thing with a varnish at the end, and that'll seal your colors together or on to the mini a little better. Cool. All right, she has blue eyes. It says so in the manual. So we're going to take just that mid-tone blue. Let's see here. How big can we see the whites of her? Oh gosh, we can see the whites of her eyes. This is going to be like surgery, y'all. So we're going to take some of that white that we spilled earlier. I'm going to thin it out a little bit, but not so much that it'll run. And we're going to make the whites of her eyes. This is so little. But people with good eyes will be able to see it, and people with eyes like me will be like, oh yeah, there's a blurry blob there. Good job. They're going to be supportive though, because we are supportive of one another in this community. All right. Oh God. You want just the finest point in the whole universe. Sometimes I use a pinhead for this, but the paint doesn't stay dry, or it doesn't stay moist very well on a pinhead. That's why we use brushes. Alright, oh God. Wish me luck, you guys. I'm looking at these individual bristles, I'm like, oh, they're the size of tree trunks. When you're dealing with a small amount of paint like this, it's often dry before it gets from the palette to the mini. So I've got a little reservoir of paint on the back of my thumb. Dude, I did it. It's not super even. So I should just leave it, but I'm not. I've got to fiddle fart with it and make it worse. No, I made it better. No, she looks great. I did a good job. I don't know if you can tell here, but she has whites of her eyes, and I could just leave that, but I'm not gonna. So I'm gonna take my medium blue. And I'm going to take that nice glob of paint and put it there with the other paint. I don't need much. I'm literally just making the tiniest dots in the whole damn universe. Well, the tiniest face. It's not coming out. This is where I squeeze another paint bottle till it explodes. Cool. I'm gonna take my custom brush. What I'm gonna do is I have a fresh brush, a very fine point, and I'm going to use this sucker to put the finest point of medium blue into the eyes of Moira. Then I might do a little darker tone on her lip. I'm not gonna give her like a fancy like super red lip. But I might just highlight the lip a little bit. I did so good. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but my neat redneck neighbors are setting off fireworks at 2:30 in the morning. Pretty cool, guys. Pretty cool. I don't know why people do that. It might be intentionally obtrusive in other people's lives, huh? Sorry, it's a little silent right now. I'm concentrating super duper hard. I don't know if you can tell. I cannot wait to watch this later and just cringe as I look at my own weird concentration faces. Alright. I've got one blue iris and one ghostly white eye, so I've got to even her out. I like the end of this brand new super fine brush. It's like a baseball bat. The eagle has landed. She looks rad, you guys. Okay. I'm gonna hit her lips with a just slightly darker skin tone. Probably what I'm going to do is take my base coat. I think I still have some left over. Let me see here. Yeah. So I'm going to take the skin tone that I used as the base coat and then go back over my highlights for her lips. I'll probably just do the bottom lip. Honestly, I'll probably do both. I'll probably just mash it on there like a gorilla because it's a tiny detail and I'm a big person. And then she's done. And I'll try and show you, and then I'll stop bothering you guys. This has been excellent. Thank you so much for playing along. I really like D&D. I like playing D&D. I like being a DM. I like painting minis. I like designing minis. I hope you guys like the minis that I designed recently. They are from the ground up. Oh God, such another tiny detail. Let's see here. How do I do? I don't think there's enough contrast, so I'm going to go a little darker. God, that's the kiss of death. There's like a little tendril of paint stuck to the end of my brush here. There we go. Okay, here we go. This is it, final detail. Booyah. Alright, and that is Moira. You know what I'm going to do is her scissors came out a little wonky. So we're going to fix her scissors. They look dumb. Damn it. I said damn it on the internet. Nice. You guys can probably tell me a thing or two about brush maintenance and what I'm doing wrong, because I know I'm not doing it properly. There we go. I'm just cleaning up the detail. My silver color for my scissors in the top of her bib was a little too thin, and it kind of spilled over and looked dumb. Cool. Scissors look good. I'm stoked, guys. She's neat. She looks great. And there she is. Guys, thank you so much for, I'm assuming you stuck around for most of that. I'm assuming you stuck around for most of that. And for that, I thank you. I thank you for your time. I hope this was relaxing. It's been very cathartic for me. I really enjoy painting minis. And I hope you enjoyed hanging out and talking with me. If you like this, let me know. You know, of all the things I said to say in the comments, maybe that's the most important one. If you like this, let me know. I can paint more minis. I have lots, literally thousands. And because I design my own STL files, I can make anything. So let me know if this is a thing you enjoyed, and we'll do more of it. I'm going to finish my very cold chai now and call it a night. Thanks, guys. So, that was Moira. You know, I'm a little rusty, but I think she turned out all right. You know, not my greatest work, but she's all right. Like I was saying earlier, Moira is a character from my recently released one-shot. I worked so damn hard on that, and I'm really, really proud of how it turned out. If you want to check that out, there's a link down below. Thank you so much for hanging out. Please like and subscribe to my channel. If you like lo-fi, you can and should check out Autumn Orange on YouTube and Spotify. I'll post a link down there for that too. And as always, please, mask up, go out, and support your local game store. We need them, and now, more than ever, they really need us. Have a good one, my friends.